I think you could say every day something with Brandon Aiyuk happens, and it's always been positive. But you can't go to a Niner practice and not notice Brandon Aiyuk. And we've talked about him a lot. I think there's a lot of buzz about Brandon Aiyuk's numbers, about Brandon Aiyuk's evolution, about Brandon Aiyuk's growing leadership. And I think we saw some of that today. He said something yesterday about all the talk. Fred Warner talks a lot. He got into it with him today. Several plays later, there was a hit that Fred Warner made on one of the other 49ers receivers, Marcus Johnson. And Brandon Aiyuk came flying out of nowhere as we saw it. Now, this is not a period.
I think hit's an understatement. Fred Warner depleted him.
Now, Marcus Johnson popped up, gave the first down signal.
Yeah,
but as he had his back turned, Brandon Aiyuk came flying in as we saw it. I don't know if there's any fans out there that filmed it from the stands. This was during an unfilmed period of practice. Brandon Aiyuk came flying in, and as we saw it, there's a crowd of people, comes flying in with his body and basically tackles Fred Warner from the side and started a whole other scrum.
My dad used to love this show called Nature, and it was on every Sunday night at like 8 o'clock. And since I'm a big Animal Planet guy, and I love watching the top predators, whether it's lions, tigers, grizzly bears, just in their element. And the youth, as they grow, go from a baby to like, by the time you're one as a tiger or grizzly bear, whatever, you're close to full size. And different ones try to become the alpha of the pride or alpha of the area. And the NFL, because of how physical it is, like in basketball, you can become an alpha the way you play, but like Kevin Durant ain't shoving anybody. In football, there's such a physical element. To become a true alpha, like it kind of has to be with your body, right? Not just your production, but like you shoving a guy around or you physically dominating someone. And that's kind of what training camp, I don't care how established a team are, there's always going to be, because the nature of drafts, young guys and younger players establishing themselves, kind of, staking their claim. And it did feel like this was today an alpha moment for like a young tiger. Like, hey, motherfuckers, I'm not taking the shit anymore. Because you would say before this year, is if I would have told you Brandon Aiyuk's going to be messing with Fred Warner, you'd be like, what? That's crazy. Guy, he wasn't messing with Fred Warner. He was actively seeking him to fight him twice without hesitation. And listen, I'm dog sitting right now. The one thing that's cool about little dogs, and just dogs in general, but little dogs, they will go up without hesitation to a big dog and sometimes act like they're a lot tougher, even though they would get destroyed. But human beings like you and me would never, I don't care how much liquid courage, but unless like your wife or your mom or something was truly threatened, would try to shove around a guy who's way bigger than you. It's just common sense. You're like, I'm not messing with that guy. Yet part of football is like smaller guys flex the bigger guys. And it doesn't always happen. But like today was a moment where it felt like, hey, motherfucker, I'm your equal on this team. Even though you'd argue resume wise, Fred would be superior to him. But like, I'm not taking whatever. And who knows? Like, it feels like there's a little more than just yapping, like something happened. Even though I saw Mayoko just tweet something like Fred was talking a couple days ago, how like Aiyuk can be a special player. It was not like Fred. Who knows? It felt like watching it. This didn't just happen, right? Even the last couple days, there's been something brewing. Did something said in the offseason? I don't know. But I thought this was a true like young badass. Like I'm an alpha now, and not even just showing it to Fred, but like showing the team like I'm fearless. It was crazy to watch, I thought, twice, of just how unhesitant he was. Like a lot of times, like, and again, Trent Williams could beat up everyone on the team. No one's going to fight Trent Williams, and Trent Williams is fighting nobody. So it's not just because you fight someone doesn't mean anything. And fights have been happening in football practice from high school to the pros in the history of football. But this one felt a little more specific, and especially the guy, he wasn't going after like, they just signed this dude from the Rams that him and Aiyuk have had a couple years of beef, right? This was like Fred Warner and him played together the whole time. Fred's like team captain.
Right.
It was, it felt like it was symbolic of something. It's hard to put
agree. I'll
the lack of hesitation on Aiyuk was pretty crazy, I thought.
Well, it was almost like he came to practice today wishing a motherfucker would, to quote Cedric the Entertainer, right?
But like that guy too. Like
yeah,
that
that's what I mean. That guy. That's what I'm talking about. Him. But that's because of what you just said, right? Like funny people hang out with funny people, great musicians hang out with great musicians, tens hang out with tens. Brandon Aiyuk views himself as a 1. So he's not going to fight a 3. There's one clear guy on the defense that he could take on. He's not going to take on Bosa because Bosa's not talking to anybody. Fred is. Maybe he can fight with Jimmy, but Fred's bigger. Fred's bigger than Jimmy Ward, right?
But and to me, Jimmy Ward ain't a fighting practice
guy.
No.
In fact,
I know what you're saying though.
Like there is something symbolic to your point on Brandon Aiyuk taking on a guy that's bigger, and then Fred
kind
Warner
of shoving people around.
Fred Warner swung the door wide open when he depleted a receiver. Fred didn't hit a running back. He hit another receiver, and I do wonder.
Killed him.
Where there is what's the saying? Like where there is a gap, water will fill. Like if you create a vacuum, something will fill that vacuum. Debo has not been around, right? Brandon Aiyuk's been around Trey Lance. Brandon Aiyuk has, in some de facto way through OTAs, became the leader of the receivers because Deebo Samuel, who had become the number 1 guy on the Niners offense, at least among the receivers and backs, was not around. And I do wonder if Aiyuk kind of views it like, I'm not saying I'm ahead of Deebo, but I am also a number 1 because that's how he's acting. He shows up he makes multiple plays every day in practice and he leads. And I thought what he did today was leadership. The degree to which he came flying in and hit Fred Warner, it wasn't hold me back. When I say he didn't, I'm doing a fist thing, but he didn't hit him with a fist. He just came flying in and tackled him. It's not hold me back, wait till the big guys get here. I mean, I think he sent a message, and I think when you take on somebody else's number 1 guy, you're saying, I just the way we talked yesterday, Nick Bosa and Trent Williams were going back and forth, talking to each other about drills and, going over some stuff. And then Trent Williams and George Kittle, like they are equals. And I think Brandon Aiyuk is saying, I am an equal, not in terms of just performance, but leadership on this team.
But this is where I use like the tiger analogy. Like a young tiger or young grizzly establishing like their alpha. They do it with someone older. Like Aiyuk hasn't been doing this as like Fred Warner was a starter on a Super Bowl team, right? Like Aiyuk was still in college. So part of like when you establish I'm an equal or I'm also an alpha, like you said, you swing up. You are like, I know I haven't been as long, and just last year I was in the doghouse, but like, I'm here to stay. Now, again, like it wasn't, I wonder if something specifically happened in a meeting room or something over time, or maybe it's just human nature. I mean, you and I were talking about in the practice field, the Derek Jeter doc and the dude that Jeter couldn't stand. And then the guy got traded and Jeter tried to act like, I had no pull. It's like, Derek, you were the star of the team. They got rid of him because they knew you hated him, but it's easy to play dumb. But not that that's this case, but not everyone is going to be. And I have no clue these two guys' relationship, but it may be fine. It doesn't feel, I mean, it's something that I wonder if it is a problem. It'll be something that Kyle would have both those guys in his office pretty quick. I mean, those are 2 of his better players, right? It's not, to me, it's one thing. And I've been to a lot of practices where fights happen where it's like, like a 6-rounder trying to prove that he's a starter against like the star D tackle, right? Or the 3rd round wide receiver taking out the star safety and like that should happen. It's a little unique when it's like, Ray Lewis and Jonathan Ogden. I'm not saying that's the case here, but like Brandon, I mean, 2 established starters. Like if you told me Aiyuk's a team captain this year, I think it's believable. Fred Warner definitely has been for several years running. It's just something to monitor on top of Aiyuk establishing him as alpha. Like, do they not like each other? Like that is kind of a question. Like, is there something more to it? Because Aiyuk specifically said something and then went after this guy twice.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's less likely that he wouldn't say something publicly if there was like a real grudge there. You know what I mean? That he'd be, if there was a real issue, that he'd be less likely to say something publicly, but
yeah, and part of it, the thing with football, even though they've been in pads 2 days, they have been practicing. I guess Fred, did he really do that much in the offseason? I remember him staying on the sideline a lot, so maybe not. Maybe there's part of it like I don't know. I mean, I could have a million theories. Just feels like Aiyuk's edgy in a good way.
let's do you want to play? I wasn't planning, we weren't planning to do this, but I have right here. Do you want to revisit what the minute of what Kyle Juszczyk told us on the podcast about Brandon Aiyuk?
Yeah.
Let me pull this up here real quick.
Why not? It's good audio.
Love Brandon, man.
So this is from December of 21. Okay. Is that right? This was after, yeah. This was going into last season. So this is after Aiyuk's rookie year. Okay.
Oh, I love Brandon, man. I have a special relationship with Brandon because he has a locker right next to me. We pulled our hamstring the same day in training camp. So we literally went through the same rehab. We're with each other every single day. So I felt like I got a good inside look at Brandon and just kind of how he ticks. And this is a guy that just wants to be great so bad. Like, he wants to put in that work. He wants to grind. And he just wants to do it. It's not something that he's being forced to or feels obligated. I was a first-round pick. I got to live up to these expectations. No, like this was in him. No matter what, this guy was going to want to be successful. And he wants somebody to follow. He wants a good veteran leader. And we had a couple at some points during the season. We had Mohamed Sanu in there for a little bit, but I feel like he would really benefit, how Debo did with having Emmanuel Sanders in the locker room. He just needs that mentor, that veteran receiver to show him exactly how it's done. Because if he sees it, he's going to emulate it and put his own style on it. And he's just going to be great, man, because he wants it so bad.
I mean, he was right. I think we can say now with hindsight, and I think we've reached the point where he is now the leader, Brandon Aiyuk.
Of the group?
I don't know if he's the leader of the group, but I don't think, he is a leader on the team. I think that much is clear.
I agree. Well, he's one of the better players on the team, pretty clear.
The other thing about it, you made a point to me.
They have talking to someone on the practice field that on the Niners staff, I say they have high hopes for him. This would be an understatement.
You and Derek?
Yeah. Well, Kyle came over and whispered something. He's like, keep an eye on 11.
You said something to me before we started the show about John on the stream says maybe Fred is just legitimately annoying. Could be.
They're annoying guys in any office setting on any team, right? Just because you're good doesn't mean you might not be annoying. I mean, you watch that Jeter doc, you're like, God, A-Rod, fuck, would not want to play with that guy. He was the best player in the league,
Yeah.
And some guys that suck are really cool. So it's just, and sometimes, and again, I think as this goes a little longer, there'll be, the guys, the true beat reporters, boots on the ground, will try to get if there's a little riff there, or this was just more like just some good old fashioned alphaing, and Brandon establishing himself. That, you're not going to like everybody. Like, as long as they have the same mission, which they clearly do, hit people hard, everything will be fine. And the other thing is, if you are going to have two guys that have a little animosity, that might even be a stretch in this situation because fights happen all the time in football. But let's just say they do. You'd want them on the opposite side of the ball, right? It's not like, well, they sit together every meeting. Well, actually, they never meet together. One's on offense, one's on defense. They don't even practice against each other. Like, once the season starts, you're installing the offense and the defense against scout teams. Like, it's not how much they're not. They spend time together, like walking through the facility and stuff. But part of it is what makes football pretty unique, unlike the other sports, is like you're pretty separated when you're on the whatever unit you're on. Like, O-linemen they're not around the DBs that often, right? They would be at like lunch and shit, but like football-wise, they're not seeing them at practice because like you split up the field. I guess you do a little one-on-one depending on, but I don't think that much.
You made the point to me before we started about the personality of some of their best players. I think that's probably an appropriate point here.
Well, and again, I'm not comparing them to here. Don't think I'm trying to hype this team up like the late 90s, mid 90s Jeter-led Yankees. But you watch the captain, which I highly recommend. It is fantastic. And there is a seriousness to their core group. When you think Derek Jeter, Andy Pettitte, Jorge Posada, Mariano Rivera, Bernie Williams, they're very serious when it came to baseball, right? Like competing, winning, just Tino Martinez, like a lot of their core guy, Paul O'Neill, just all felt the same.
Did you say Bernie?
Who?
Bernie Williams?
Him? Didn't they kind of look, now talking about it, like a little patriot-y? Like they're not fucking around. Like
David Cohn?
They are there to win. Like that is the goal. You get around the Niners, like Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, I guess Fred's talking a little bit, but like their core guys, Juszczyk, Kittle, are their coaching staff. It is not a screw around group. It's why like a couple guys, younger guys that are always screaming, like really stand out. Not that they aren't even like core guys. They don't even play on the team, but there is not much. I vividly remember when I first started doing this and going to Niner practice with Harbaugh and just thinking how serious of a nature that their guys were. And Dante Whitner's out of practice and he still carries himself kind of like that. Like Dante is a pretty just serious. You're like, if you didn't know, you wouldn't probably, because he's not the biggest guy, how big of a badass he was. But like once you realize why he fit in that crew. Frank, Justin Smith, Willis, Bowman, Staley, they're guys, Upati. You didn't hear a peep. It was just like practice, physical, serious, getting after it. And then obviously the team was awesome. This team, I think, and really has the last couple of years, I'll never forget when Sherman got here and started playing. You thought like Richards is outspoken, and it's like, nah, it's just that practice, like pretty locked in.
Yeah,
like, this isn't. It ain't playing grab ass out there. Jimmy Ward's another guy. Like you don't hear a peep from Jimmy Ward. He's just out there, serious. His reps. Hufanga fits perfectly in. Right. He just of that mold, locked in, dialed. Now we'll find out how good he is, but in terms of mindset, like, is it pretty clear why John Lynch loves the guy? Like, I mean, he is a serious fucking cat. And I would say this, most of the best teams, I'll never forget sitting there with you because your power's out. You came over to my house watching the NFC Championship game when Aaron Donald rallied the troops. We're like, they're fucked. And it turns out they were. But I think he's a great example. And he's represented like the one thing, it's weird. The Seattle Niner rivalry, Seattle was a lot louder at the time. Like to me, the Richard of Seattle was a lot different than the Richard that came with the Niners. And who knows, maybe it was, he got injured, cut. He was just different, more mature. I don't know. But like this Niner team and like the Rams team are really more like the old school Niners team. Now, remember, Seattle never shut up and they backed it up. But like the Rams are not a fuck around group. Like you think like Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, Whitworth. Now they got Stafford. It's like they are pretty locked in. Like really their most gregarious guys are coach, And I think that works in the NFL. It really does.